Friends and viewers, let me tell you something straight. What the global audience saw unfold wasn't just another tense exchange between leaders. It was a bold, calculated political masterstroke, delivered right in front of the cameras. The Canadian Prime Minister stared straight at the American President, and, with no hesitation or polite cover, essentially told him to go straight to hell. And the part that really alarmed those in Washington was this. Mark Carney never lost his composure for even a moment. This was a meticulously planned, precise, and ruthless strategy. You could tell by the way he stood firmly beneath the Canadian flag, looking like someone who already understood how this moment would be recorded in history books. There was no tremor in his voice, no sudden emotional display, no sense of winging it. Every phrase sounded meticulously prepared, as if it had been refined over weeks in confidential meetings. While most people tuning in focused on those three shocking words that traveled the globe, the knowledgeable people inside the Beltway spotted something even more serious right away. Carney had expertly drawn the White House into a well-laid snare. Within hours, clear signs of anxiety started moving through backroom discussions. Advisors began offering opposing takes during live TV segments. One described Carney as someone acting out of pure desperation. Another tried to wave him off as having no real influence. Pause and picture that confusion for a moment. If the opponent truly carried no weight, why the sudden rush, as though the whole structure was collapsing? It was obvious they saw Trump struck at the point he guards most fiercely, his long-built aura of total command. Then came the reply from Trump himself, and that's the point where the clash truly erupted. Rather than keeping his composure, or showing the steady poise expected of the office, he let emotion take over, doing so openly and on a deeply personal basis. The dynamic flipped in an instant from talks about commerce to an open clash of egos. Experienced analysts from every perspective saw what was happening. A leader confronted publicly on the international stage, who appeared visibly unsettled. And there's something the media isn't quite ready to state plainly. The financial markets sensed the trouble sooner than the reporters. The Dow experienced a notable drop of hundreds of points. This drop wasn't due to any fresh policy reveal, new penalties, or revised trade barriers. Investors had detected signs of instability. They noticed a hazardous development as two allied countries shifted from planned policy tensions into what felt like authentic personal conflict between their leaders. And as we all know, markets despise uncertainty because it leads to unpredictable swings. Global financial institutions began circulating cautious alerts internally. Large companies put their growth initiatives on hold. Quietly, some investors started distancing themselves from assets linked to the Trump name. The reason wasn't simply that Carney had criticized the U.S., but rather that the way Trump responded made the entire episode feel volatile and hard to manage. Yet what truly rattled the foundations in Washington went deeper than that headline insult. The true power of Carney's approach lay in the careful buildup during the minute leading up to those famous words. Rather than firing off a blunt jab, he constructed a thorough argument, much like a skilled lawyer presenting evidence, and then issued his firm conclusion. The setting was Ottawa, with the flags of both countries displayed together. Cameras were live, and journalists seemed prepared for just another standard diplomatic event, packed with the usual vague statements that fade from memory almost immediately. At the outset, that's precisely what appeared to be happening. The American president spoke initially, delivering about 7 minutes of well-rehearsed points on fair agreements, robust economic performance, and expressed admiration for Canada. It was the kind of familiar rhetoric meant to convey firmness without sparking major new stories. Everything felt orderly, expected, and under tight management. Officials in Washington likely felt reassured that the gathering remained firmly in hand. They anticipated it would conclude like so many similar events: a quick handshake, some pleasant expressions, and then departure with claims of advancement. But when Prime Minister Mark Carney approached the microphone, The mood in the room shifted noticeably. It wasn't an abrupt or theatrical change, and that subtlety made it all the more effective. He took his time adjusting the mic, set down one page of notes on the stand, yet proceeded without glancing back at it. This small action carried weight. The presence of the paper signaled thorough preparation, while disregarding it demonstrated total mastery over the content he was about to share. Leaders of his caliber rarely leave anything to chance. He started out using typical diplomatic phrasing, expressing gratitude to the organizers, highlighting joint efforts, and touching on common goals among partners. His delivery remained steady in tone and stance, seeming entirely routine. So routine, in fact, that few in attendance sensed they were being led into a strategic setup. Then he made the crucial turn. Carney referenced what he described as 18 months of ongoing economic pressure, deliberately choosing the term coercion instead of milder words like tariffs or disputes. That choice landed with real impact in diplomatic communities because it reframed the entire discussion. Policy differences are one thing, but suggesting one nation is attempting to compel another into yielding changes the picture dramatically. And that perspective was exactly what he aimed to imprint globally. From there, he methodically assembled his points, acting as if presenting a formal case in a legal proceeding. He outlined all the steps Canada had taken toward dialogue, the various proposals for talks, the visits made to Washington, the offers of compromise, and the sincere discussions that ultimately went unanswered. None of it was delivered with heat or passion. And that measured approach made the words hit even harder. Objective details delivered coolly often prove more damaging than raised voices. You could sense the atmosphere in the space transforming. Journalists paused their note-taking and focused intently. The camera angles even seemed to zoom tighter as it became evident this had evolved far beyond an ordinary briefing. It felt like a formal accusation. Then Carney reached the statement that altered the course of the entire event. He noted that Canada had endured financial measures intended not for balanced outcomes, but to enforce compliance. With the cool precision of his banking background, he stated flatly that yielding sovereignty was something Canada would never do. Not when pressured, not when threatened, and not toward any country. In that instant, the strategy locked into place perfectly. If the U.S. president responded with feeling, it would validate Carney's points live for everyone watching. If he remained quiet, he risked appearing diminished after such a direct challenge. It was a no-win situation. A brief silence followed, lasting perhaps 2 or 3 seconds. The room went completely still, and one could almost feel the collective intake of breath. Then Carney leaned in just a bit and delivered the declaration that sent ripples through news outlets everywhere. He put it plainly. If anyone expected Canada to submit to this kind of economic force and give up its independence, then the response had to be go to hell. The audience froze in place. There was no sound of clearing throats, no keyboard clatter, no shutters snapping. Only absolute, stunned quiet. Everyone present understood they had seen something irreversible, something press teams couldn't smooth over afterward. And mere feet away, Donald Trump absorbed every word clearly. This marked the beginning of serious trouble for the administration. The most damaging outcome was that Trump responded precisely as Carney had anticipated. It showed right away in his body language. His jaw clenched visibly, his posture shifted ahead aggressively. His facial expression moved from one of steady assurance to clear irritation. This wasn't the staged intensity people see at his rallies. It felt genuine, the sort of response that slips out before it can be masked. Around him, signs of alarm emerged quickly. An advisor grabbed for a communication device. Another staffer turned to speak with the communications team. Before he even uttered a response, those nearby appeared uneasy. For those covering politics, that was telling. Teams are drilled to remain discreet. Sudden movements during a broadcast diplomatic session signal that events have veered off plan and could lead to bigger issues. Trump then walked right into the prepared trap. instead of a measured policy reply, he took it personally. He described Carney as disgraceful and suggested Canada was disrespecting Americans broadly. He issued warnings of potential repercussions. But the comment that left experienced journalists exchanging glances in disbelief was when he referred to Carney as a failed banker pretending to be Prime Minister. Though it might have brought momentary satisfaction in terms of politics and global relations, it poured fuel on an already intense situation. The differences stood out sharply. Carney had positioned his comments as standing firm for his nation's interests against outside force. Trump, however, directed his reply at the individual leader. In the realm of world affairs, these represent very distinct approaches. One conveys sovereign resistance. The other comes across as heated, impulsive, and focused on the personal. And once a world leader appears to lose steadiness when challenged, the effects on public view can spread rapidly and widely. Soon after, broadcasters in Europe looped the video repeatedly. They highlighted not only the statements but particularly Trump's expressions, his immediate response, and physical cues. Commentators began employing terms that officials dread: rattled, goaded, clearly unsettled. Consider the impact on someone whose identity revolves around projecting unbreakable authority. For years, Trump has promoted himself as the figure no one can unsettle, always commanding the situation, never outmaneuvered. Yet the recording revealed the reverse. A longtime journalist observed that he appeared caught off guard without a clear follow-up. That observation circulated widely because, privately, even some associates saw its accuracy. The responses from other countries added to concern back in Washington. Leaders in Europe steered clear of direct criticism toward Carney, and that restraint carried its own strong message. The UK emphasized proper conduct in talks, but stopped short of faulting Canada. Australia acknowledged that quite a few countries understood Canada's position regarding American trade approaches. Germany took it a step further by echoing Carney's terminology of economic coercion. This marked a significant shift, as having key partners use your framing allows one to shape the broader conversation. At that point, Carney had moved past simply protecting Canadian interests and was casting the U.S. in the role of instigator before the international community. Trump, by comparison, seemed more alone in his stance. And here's the honest assessment that partisan voices avoided. True power isn't shown by who raises their voice highest during a speech. It shows in who keeps their composure amid intense scrutiny and maximum stress. Carney demonstrated an understanding of this principle. Trump appeared to overlook it briefly, and economic players were already tallying the costs. Financial markets responded as if detecting a critical alert in a high-altitude flight. Unlike elected officials, these markets ignore national loyalty, crowd-pleasing phrases, or media narratives. Their focus remains solely on potential hazards. Once the exchange appeared driven by personal feelings instead of strategy, significant capital started shifting positions. The Dow fell sharply shortly after trading opened. This drop followed not any official announcement, but simply the rapid spread of the video. That detail reveals the gravity. Investors were no longer weighing policies alone. They were weighing unpredictability, raw feelings, and the worrisome chance that two major partner economies were now guided by bruised egos rather than clear thinking. And then came the development that truly undercut the White House storyline. The Canadian dollar actually gained a bit of ground. Consider that again. The smaller economy facing off directly against the United States saw its currency strengthen because traders viewed Carney as the steadier figure. That outcome represented an image setback felt across the planet. Currency traders operate without sentiment. They bet on perceived steadiness. And in that moment, the markets rated Canada's guidance as more reliable than America's. That view moved quickly into corporate circles. International banks sent out internal notices about heightened risks in U.S. Canada business ties. Large firms quietly paused new projects, watching to see if tensions would worsen. Supply chain backup strategies that had sat idle for months sprang into action overnight. But the sharpest blow struck straight at the Trump name itself. Luxury travel firms in Europe began dropping Trump-linked properties from their top recommendations. Global event planners started pulling bookings. Premium corporate groups moved their gatherings elsewhere. And here's the tough fact that the political world often misses. Affluent, international clients avoid tying their spending to unnecessary drama, especially the kind fueled by unpredictable political flare-ups. Then arrived the scenario every premium brand dreads: brand alignment reviews. That term may sound neutral, but it carries serious weight. In corporate terms, it signals the equivalent of a serious closed-door conversation. It means partners are quietly asking whether linking to this identity now poses risks for their own clients. And that very question suddenly hovered over Trump. Insurance providers began adjusting what they call headline risk. In plain terms, how probable is it that this public figure will spark turmoil, demonstrations, legal issues, image harm, or disruptions that hit the bottom line? A prime minister openly telling a president to go to hell, while the president shows clear loss of poise on live broadcast, fits the exact profile insurers avoid. And insurers base decisions on numbers, not feelings. Elevated risk brings higher costs, tighter rules, and reduced returns on every related asset. Meanwhile, Trump backers mobilized online just as one might expect. Conservative voices voiced strong disapproval. Supportive outlets painted Carney as overreaching and hostile toward America. For about 2 days, the core supporters felt fired up, but here's the plain reality few in echo chamber broadcasts wanted to voice. Fiery online posts do not book luxury suites in London, Paris, or Dubai. Television cheers do not calm worried investors, and patriotic rallying cries do not prevent global partners from stepping back when real money hangs in the balance. Then another cautionary signal lit up inside Washington. 3 Republican senators from Trump's own side released careful statements raising questions about the exchange's tone and overall approach. To everyday observers, that might seem minor. In political terms, however, it served as a quiet alert, because tone and approach is insider code for growing worry that matters are turning risky. Those senators were establishing some separation, doing so thoughtfully and on record. And once figures from your own ranks start noting concerns publicly, everyone in the Capitol knows the next steps if problems continue to build. The White House hoped the fallout would fade quickly, but on the world stage, something deeper had already shifted. This had stopped being merely a trade disagreement. It had turned into a clear examination of steadiness, guidance, and command when stakes are highest. And at that moment, the world was starting to form its own judgment on who came across as stronger. And this is the element history may hold on to, long after the trade figures, the news cycles, and the standard political lines have faded. Mark Carney did not simply deliver an insult to Donald Trump. He targeted the one core asset Trump had spent a lifetime constructing, his carefully guarded image of unbreakable strength. For decades, Trump had shaped the role of the dominant force, the negotiator who always prevails, the presence that owns every space, the one who never reveals any crack, pause, or personal sensitivity. That image supported not only his political path, but the full scope of the Trump brand, from properties and licensing to media presence and public events. All of it rested on a single pledge: unyielding power. And then, on one stage before one microphone, came those 3 words: go to hell. What turned the instant truly harmful was not the remark alone. Influential figures have faced insults across time. The lasting harm stemmed from Trump's visible response. Because in the political arena, how things appear can harden into fact with surprising speed. And the appearance set that day was straightforward. Carney had reached beneath the surface and unsettled Trump before the entire planet. Once that view settles into collective awareness, it travels like a persistent force. Each replay of the clip strengthens it. Each report adds weight. Each review of gestures, each market shift, Each statement from abroad widens the impression. And the troubling reality for the administration is that the recording keeps playing without pause. It pays no attention to damage control sessions or spokespeople or polished responses. It simply repeats the sequence over and over. Viewers keep seeing the same pattern. Carney steady and measured. Trump visibly agitated. Carney speaking with the authority of a final judgment. Trump reacting as if personally stung. That contrast became the central story. And once that story took hold worldwide, the ripples moved past immediate politics into lasting strategic consequences. Markets adjusted their forecasts for upcoming talks. Partners reassessed America's reliability when tested. Businesses reevaluated their exposure to potential shifts. Even lawmakers from the same party quietly weighed their own positioning. Because the difficult question now lingering over Washington is this: what changes when other leaders discover they can trigger an emotional response from the American president during a live global broadcast? That single question reshapes how diplomacy functions everywhere. Influential voices worldwide detect any sign of vulnerability the way predators sense opportunity. If they conclude that applying pressure yields results, they will apply more. This explains why maintaining calm carries real importance, not for show or appearances, but for the exercise of power itself. And right now, regardless of whether supporters prefer to acknowledge it, the recording planted a seed of uncertainty. Can a president handle complex talks effectively once others learn exactly how to unsettle him? Can a worldwide premium empire hold its standing when the public face of the brand reveals emotional strain under pressure? Can an administration steer an international dispute once it shifts from policy to something deeply personal? Those questions now trail Trump into every setting, from corporate discussions to diplomatic offices, from investment houses to planning sessions. And no volume of online backlash can erase the simple fact that the world witnessed the exchange exactly as it happened. Mark Carney said, "Go to hell." Trump heard it clearly. The cameras recorded the reaction. The world observed it all unfold live. And somewhere tonight, in financial centers around the planet, experts continue to measure exactly how costly those three words could prove to be in the end.